Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my double Game Week 24 team selection where we'll discuss which players I'm looking to bring in for the double and for future weeks as well. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So again, because there was no transfer plans video on Sunday, I'll quickly review Game Week 23 in this video, but don't worry, the transfer plans video will be back for Game Week 25, so look out for that on Sunday evening. But yeah, Game Week 23 was not a particularly good game week for me. It's funny because it's essentially exactly the same team that I fielded in Game Week 22 that got me that ridiculously massive green arrow. I fielded the same team, but this time with a better goalkeeper, and I've somehow come away with a massive red arrow. And this just goes to show how unpredictable FPL is, because in all honesty, I'd argue my team looked slightly better for Game Week 23 than it did for Game Week 22, but it was 57 points all out, which was a reasonable red arrow from 149k to 180k. I think I was about 9 points off a green arrow, so it was fairly hefty, but it wasn't the end of the world. Still inside the top 200k, and I just want to string together a few green arrows. That's now 4 red arrows in 5 game weeks. I just can't seem to string together multiple green arrows. And in all honesty, when you see my team for Game Week 24, it's not looking particularly good. And we'll discuss this moving forward. It's now no longer just, do you have a good team? It's also, are you playing the assistant manager chip? Because not only do I not have a triple captainship active this week, not only do I only have 3 doublers when some people have 4 or 5, but so many people, I think it's almost 400,000 managers already have activated the assistant manager chip, and therefore the average points for the week is going to go up massively as well. So these are things we're going to have to start taking into account. And it basically means, I reckon, from now until the end of the season, especially around blanks and doubles, if you're not playing a chip and you're trying to just get through with free transfers, you are probably going to expect a red arrow. And over the next 3 weeks, with lots of people having the assistant manager chip active, I think there'll be more red arrows to come. But anyway, in this week, I had a decision to make. I wanted to sell Sanchez, so I had 2 options. Option 1 was Sanchez to Alisson, which felt very obvious, upgrade the goalkeeper, get my 3rd Liverpool, and most people suggest I'd do that. The other option, rather than Sanchez to Alisson, was Sanchez to Pickford and Wood to Gakpo. On the deadline stream, I was going back and forth on this quite a lot, but I just felt like saving one of the transfers, getting in Alisson, who I think in the long term is a great option, it just made a lot of sense. We also know that Alisson has a good chance of doubling in 33 as well. That was a 17-point swing. And again, I've been saying this, I didn't expect Alisson to outscore Gakpo. I fully expected Gakpo to get like 9 to 12 points, and I hoped that Alisson would get 6. Instead, Alisson gets 2, Gakpo obviously goes and gets the 16, but also Pickford keeps a clean sheet as well. It was basically worst case scenario. Not only, though, have I lost out on 17 points immediately, I guess I've saved the transfer, I'm then losing a transfer later. Because Fabianski has now lost his place, it looks like I might not have a goalkeeper for blank Game Week 29 if Liverpool do blank, which we'll discuss in the actual team selection part of the video. So basically, yeah, it's a disaster. It couldn't have gone much worse for me. I do agree, and this is a bit hindsighty, but maybe I should have attacked the attacking fixture for Ipswich at home and not gone for a defender. But at the same time, if Gakpo had only got 2 returns, if Alisson had held on to that clean sheet and Liverpool didn't have bloody Harvey Elliott marking Jacob Greaves from that corner, then maybe it wouldn't look as bad. Anyway, outside of that, the entire defence actually returned. An assist for Munoz and Trent despite losing the clean sheets. Obviously, Gabriel getting a clean sheet and a bonus point was really nice. But then after that, nothing really. Salah, everyone captained anyway. Isak actually hurts my rank every time he returns because everyone owns him and a few people captain him. So those 2 didn't gain me anything, and then the rest of my attackers blanked. So Fernandes, Palmer, Rodgers, Mateta, Wood, all blanking. As I say, it's very funny because only last week and in recent weeks, Mateta, Wood, Fernandes have all been getting me points, even Rodgers, whereas this week it was the complete opposite. So basically, yeah, it was a relatively big red arrow. I'd like to forget all about Game Week 23 and hopefully somehow get a green arrow in Game Week 24, but it's not looking very likely. So guys, moving on to my Game Week 24 team selection. I'm currently lining up in a 3-4-3. I have 3 free transfers and 0.7 million in the bank. So a little bit of flexibility in terms of where I can go moving forward. I just wanted to focus on Game Week 24 and Game Week 25, the gap between the two. So we've got like a couple of weeks between Game Week 24 and Game Week 25. The reason for that is we have the EFL Cup semi-final second legs between Liverpool and Spurs, and Newcastle and Arsenal. So we will find out who reaches the EFL Cup final, and that will decide which teams blank in 29 and therefore which teams double in 33. And we also have the FA Cup fourth round games, which will give us a bit more of an idea about which teams will blank in Game Week 34 and therefore double in 36. So between 24 and 25, therefore before the Game Week 25 deadline, we are going to get so much more information around the blanks and doubles for the remainder of the season. As a result, if you don't feel like you have a really good set of moves to make this week, if you feel like you can roll without it being a detriment to your team, definitely attack the doubles, of course. It may be worth having those free transfers because next week, the free transfers are more valuable for me because you can make all of those extra decisions with the extra information and context around them. It's why I am slightly like, there's a couple of transfers you'll see in the next section when we go through my transfer plans. There's one which involves 2 transfers and there's one which involves 3. And I actually really like the 3 free transfer move. But it means that I only have 1 free transfer then going into the Game Week 25 deadline. And what happens if we get a surprise upset in the EFL Cup? Maybe Liverpool don't reach the final of the Cup and maybe Spurs do. Maybe we get a couple of upsets in the FA Cup, which give us a bit more information around Game Week 34 and 36. I just feel like the free transfers could be very useful going into Game Week 25. So I'm in this sort of hesitant position where there are some things that I could really do with my team, but I'm just wondering if it is worth moving this week. So I thought I would just explain the context of why I keep saying that we're going to find out a lot between 24 and 25. So let's start with the goalkeepers, and Alisson and Fabianski is the pairing. Obviously, I brought in Alisson last week. The reason that I am now a bit unsure about this and why I probably wouldn't bring in Alisson if you were looking to bring in a Liverpool asset this week is, again, if Liverpool reach the EFL Cup final, and remember they lost the first leg 1-0 to Spurs, they have to overturn that deficit, and Van de Ven and Romero could be back at that point. But let's say that they do overturn the deficit and Liverpool reach the EFL Cup final, they will blank in Game Week 29 along with obviously Aston Villa, who they play. I obviously knew that when I brought in Alisson. I knew that there was a very good chance that he blanked in 29, but I had Fabianski on my bench, who has Everton in that game week. I did say that I would quite like to wait a week to bring in Alisson because I want to make sure that Fabianski is still the West Ham number 1 under Graham Potter, because the only game where Areola was on the bench was the most recent one before, so game week 22, but he was just coming back from injury. So we knew that once Areola was fully fit, he could come in as the number 1, and Fabianski hasn't been brilliant recently. So I knew it was a risk, but I was willing to take the risk because I felt like the Alisson move made the most sense for my team. And I guess my reasoning was, if I have to make an extra transfer, I have to make an extra transfer on the goalkeeper spot. That now looks very likely because, of course, Fabianski has lost his place, or at least in Game Week 23, Areola started ahead of Fabianski. So basically, the long and the short of it is for Game Week 29, if Liverpool reach the EFL Cup final, I don't have a goalkeeper now, and I don't plan on using my free hit. So I have to hope for 2 things. Liverpool don't reach the final and that Spurs somehow hang on to that lead, or at least maybe just draw the second game and then, of course, they'll progress to the final. Or, between now and 29, Fabianski somehow gets the place back in the team, but I don't think that's very likely unless Areola gets injured. And then I just have to use a transfer in 29, or I just play with 10 and don't have a goalkeeper. To be honest, Fabianski was almost definitely only going to get me probably 1 or 2 points in Game Week 29 anyway, so maybe I am worrying about nothing. Maybe it's not that big of a deal, but it would probably put me off buying Alisson right now if your backup goalkeeper was Fabianski. So hopefully that makes sense. But in terms of this game week, I am very happy to have Alisson. I know a lot of people would have gone for Van Dijk, Konate, Alisson, and then seen Gakpo put a 16-pointer in against Ipswich. You're not expecting the likes of Van Dijk, Konate, and Alisson to outscore Gakpo against Ipswich at home. If you were expecting that, then I think that was probably a faulty decision, right? You weren't expecting him to go massive because Alisson is going to get probably 6 points maximum, maybe 7 against a team like Ipswich. The idea being that given that he's going to start every game and Gakpo might not get 90, and Gakpo's not scoring in every game, over the long term, considering the price differences and considering the fact that he takes a goalkeeper spot rather than a forward one, Alisson might get close to Gakpo, and it might allow you to keep some forwards that you prefer instead, or use transfers in the attack elsewhere. So again, if you brought in Alisson expecting him to outscore Gakpo, I just don't think that was ever going to happen. Hopefully, between now and sort of game week 28, maybe even a little bit longer term than that, if you can hold Alisson over that period, hopefully he can get close enough to Gakpo that it doesn't feel like a dreadful decision. So yeah, I'm still very, very happy to have Alisson. It's just game week 29 is a little bit of a sad situation right now. I've obviously got Trent Alexander-Arnold as well, so that completes the double up on the Liverpool defence for me, which obviously, because I have Salah, means I won't have Gakpo. We'll discuss that when we move on to the forwards. I'm not too worried about that. I don't think this is a great double for Liverpool. I wouldn't be surprised if they keep 0 clean sheets, but also score very few goals. Bournemouth are flying at the moment. I think what I'm really hopeful for is an attacking return from Trent across the double, lots of saves for Alisson against Bournemouth, and then maybe a clean sheet. I think the ideal situation for me with an Alisson would be like 3 or 4 points against Bournemouth, lots of saves, probably concedes, and then goes and gets a clean sheet and maybe some saves and bonus against Everton. So I would say like 10 points from Alisson in the double would be great, and maybe something like 10 to 12 points from Trent would also be very, very strong. Just through appearance points alone, though, you're still likely to pick up more points than someone that only has one fixture. So I'm very, very happy to have the double up of Alisson and Trent. And obviously, they did get a complete rest in the Champions League as well, so they should be feeling pretty fresh. When we then move on to the rest of the defence, they don't have fantastic fixtures this week, but I'm also pretty happy with them for the medium to long term. So I'll start with Gabriel. City at home, I don't know what version of City are going to turn up. At least they are still scoring goals at the moment from a City perspective. So you probably would expect Gabriel to concede. But then again, they are very, very solid, Arsenal, defensively. So you never know. I think Gabriel scored, didn't he, earlier on in the season against Man City too. He loves a header in a big game. So I wouldn't be surprised if he goes and gets an attacking return. And this could be a bit of a cagey affair. And obviously after the City game, he plays against Leicester and West Ham. So for now, I'm happy keeping Gabriel for at least the next 3 game weeks, and then I'll assess after that because he is quite expensive. And if I do want to make some upgrades in the attack, downgrading a Gabriel to someone that has a good fixture in game week 29 and maybe has a bit of attacking threat, it could be a decent shout. Like even someone like a Howson, I could bring in for Gabriel soon. So let's assess, but for now he's okay. And then I basically need to start one of Munoz or Robinson. And I just think Manchester United is so much weaker than Newcastle. So Munoz has Man United away, Robinson has Newcastle away. I think I just start the player with the better fixture, which is Munoz. I also think that from open play, I still think Munoz has more attacking threat than Robinson. Robinson's slightly more creative, but then Munoz has slightly greater goal threat. And also, we've seen in recent weeks, Munoz has created quite a few big chances for his team. So I just think in combination, Munoz is a slightly better asset to start this week than Robinson, but I don't think there's that much in it. In terms of kind of selling any of my defenders, Munoz, of course, is likely to blank in game week 29 as long as Newcastle reach the EFL Cup final. So Munoz will create an issue for me at some point, but then he's got Everton, Fulham, Villa, and Ipswich. And I kind of want to keep him for the Ipswich game and then maybe sell him ahead of 29. So I could sell Munoz, but I'm not that keen to. Robinson, again, could blank in 29 if Spurs reach the EFL Cup final, but also has okay fixtures coming up, a couple of decent home fixtures. I don't feel the desperate need to sell him because Fulham are very good defensively. Over the last 3 game weeks, they've conceded the lowest XGC. Or they have the lowest XGC over the last 3. So they're one of the better defences in the league in recent weeks. So I guess I'm saying I'm happy with the defence. The only defenders that I could bring in this week is probably Mikalenko or like an Everton defender, O'Brien, Tarkowski, Branthwaite, whoever it is. I'm just not sure that that's a great use of a transfer. Given what I just said, the transfer is going to be super useful in 25 because we're going to have a lot of extra information. Munoz is very attacking anyway, and United aren't a particularly good attack. I just don't think an Everton defender massively upgrades my team for this week, and it utilises a very important free transfer that I might want moving forward. So I think for now, I would be surprised if I use a defender transfer. So it'll be Alisson, Trent, Gabriel, Munoz. Let's move on to the midfield. So guys, moving on to the midfield, and this is where I can envision a lot of changes happening, potentially this week and also in future game weeks as well, because there are some certain players that I would love to own that I don't right now, and also I think a couple of my players, especially one of them, just isn't a particularly good own at the moment based on where they're playing, the underlying data, and also a bit of the eye test as well. And yes, I'm talking about Enzo Fernandez, as I'll discuss in a second. The 2 players that I am very happy with, and I can foresee myself keeping for the foreseeable future, is Salah and Palmer. Obviously, Salah has my armband this week. He's going to hurt my rank, even though I own and captain him. So if you're not aware of how effective ownership works, basically, if someone is at 100% effective ownership, it means basically, let's say everyone owns them, but no one's captained them. And if you have them and don't captain them, you basically gain nothing from them. If they're at 200% effective ownership, it means basically everyone owns them and everyone's captained them. And again, if you own and captain, you're gaining very little. Because everyone owns Salah, pretty much everyone's captaining Salah, and because so many, and we're looking at maybe 40 to 50% of the database are activating the triple captainship, I think Salah's effective ownership will be about 240 to 250%, which means if you own and captain Salah, you are still losing about 40% of his points. So if he goes out there and gets a 20-pointer, you're going to lose about 8 points, even though you own and captain Salah. So basically, if you've not got your triple captainship active, you have to just sit there and pray that Salah stays fairly quiet, which is a really weird position to be in. There aren't many times that you will sit there and hope that your captain blanks in FPL, but this is the situation that we're in. So yeah, Salah's absolutely fine. I expect Salah to do quite well. I just hope that due to the difficulty of the fixtures, that maybe Liverpool don't score as many goals, because I've got no triple captain active. I've not got Gakpo. I mean, an ideal situation for me would be like 0-0 probably in both the games, or maybe 1-0 in both games where Trent gets the goal with no assist. But yeah, I'm hoping for clean sheets as opposed to attacking returns. And then obviously on Cole Palmer, it's actually a great fixture. I mean, if Salah only had the Bournemouth away game, I'd probably be captaining Palmer this week, but obviously the additional fixture really helps. But yeah, Palmer's fine. I know he's been really disappointing in terms of his attacking output. I think that's now 3 goals in 8 weeks with 0 assists. So the attacking output hasn't really been there for Palmer. But I really like the fixture this week. And then he goes into Brighton, Villa, both away, but then Southampton and Leicester at home. You just really want to keep Cole Palmer for that period there. And obviously if he does end up playing in Game Week 29, which looks quite likely, then at least you have a player for Game Week 29 too. So Salah and Palmer I'm very, very happy with. And honestly, I am quite happy with Fernandes. Like, you'll see in a second, there is a very good chance I sell Fernandes this week. But it's not because I think Fernandes is an issue. When I look at what I want from an FPL asset, I want 90 minutes firstly. Fernandes' minutes are absolutely excellent. I love set pieces. Fernandes still takes a lot of set pieces. And I love penalties. And he has open play goal threat and assist threat. Now, his data isn't fantastic. He hasn't had as many chances to score goals. He has in recent weeks played the deeper role a couple of times as well. But a player that has all of those routes to points and still gets attacking returns, and when he does is so good for bonus, is never a massive issue. And when I look at the fixtures, he's got Ipswich in 27 and then Leicester in 29. As well as playing against Spurs next week, and Palace this week isn't awful. Like, it's actually a really nice set of fixtures for Man United. In Game Week 29 against Leicester, depending which team's blank, he's arguably the best captaincy option. So I don't think Fernandes is an issue. So why am I looking to sell him? He's my only real easy route to Bryan MBEUMO, who for me is a marginally better asset. Now, I don't think MBEUMO is a drastically better asset, and you may disagree, and most people probably would, but I do think he's better. And sometimes you have to sell what you think are good assets for other good assets. So I think Fernandes is great. I'd like to keep Fernandes. But if it's the route that makes most sense to go and get Bryan MBEUMO, I don't think I should be stubborn and sit there with Fernandes in my team. So I guess what I'm saying here is I really would like Bryan MBEUMO. Whether it's this week or not, I've got no idea. But that might be the easiest route. And when you look at the possible transfer routes I have, I'm having to do a lot of dancing around and readjusting funds to get MBEUMO without selling Bruno Fernandes. So that's the big decision for me. I just wanted to say I don't think he's bad, but I do think he is a weaker asset than Bryan MBEUMO. Morgan Rogers, no plans to sell Morgan Rogers, at least for the next couple of weeks. Wolves away this week is fine. He's just come off the back of a hat-trick, by the way, in the Champions League. I'd love to see that for him. And then he's obviously got Ipswich at home next week. So for the next 2 weeks, again, Rogers will be staying in the team. He's then got Chelsea, Crystal Palace, Brentford, and then he goes into what is likely to be a blank game week for him. Again, assuming that Liverpool reach the EFL Cup final. If Liverpool don't, then he plays in 29, but it is obviously against Liverpool. And so I have to decide at that point, do I look to move him on? So really, I think Palmer, Salah, Rogers are going to be staying for now. Fernandes might leave. The player that I would love to sell is Enzo Fernandez. I would like, if I could, in an ideal world, I'd sell Enzo Fernandez for MBEUMO this week. And when you look at my transfer plans, they revolve around trying to upgrade Enzo to MBEUMO because that would be the ideal situation. And I keep Bruno Fernandes, but I need 3 million to do that. So I need to free up an extra 2.3 million to get Enzo to MBEUMO, which is very difficult. The other thing to note, if I sell Enzo for MBEUMO, next week, I don't really have an easy route to a Bournemouth player because I won't want to sell Rogers ahead of Ipswich, but I want a Bournemouth midfielder ahead of Southampton. So I'm in this really tricky position where I'd like to upgrade Enzo to MBEUMO, but if I do that, it means I can't get a Bournemouth mid. So that's when it comes back to me saying, maybe just selling Bruno for MBEUMO this week and then doing Enzo to a Bournemouth mid next week. Maybe that's the most straightforward transfer strategy for me. So that's it. I think in an ideal world, my midfield would be Salah, Palmer, Fernandes, Rogers, and MBEUMO. However, I think it's very probably likely, based on Just what feels right is Salah, Palmer, MBEUMO, Rodgers, and then a Bournemouth midfielder. That is probably what I'm imagining it will look like for Game Week 25 and beyond. Hopefully that all makes sense. It will probably make even more sense when we discuss my exact transfer plans a little bit later. But let's now take a look at the three forwards and assess the team overall. So moving on to the three forwards, I'm not displeased necessarily. I suppose because Wood and Mateta have just blanked after returning for multiple weeks in a row. I'm like, ooh, I'm not so sure now. And obviously, Gakpo got the 16-pointer. We have a double game week for Iliman Ndiaye if I want to go and get an Everton attacker as well. Not that I'm massively enamoured by the Everton assets. And also the likes of Johan Wissa too. So there are other forwards that I could look to go and get. And I think, honestly, all three of these have issues associated with them. I'll start with Isak. The next run of fixtures, Fulham, City, Forest, Liverpool, aren't great. And then he blanks in 29, assuming that Newcastle reach the EFL Cup final. So Isak has a really difficult run, followed by a blank, but then he's likely to double in 33 if he blanks in 29. And also they have a nice run of fixtures after this difficult run. The reason that I would be less inclined to sell Isak isn't because I think he's fantastic, although I obviously do. It's more the amount of money I've tied up. I bought him at 8.5 and I think he's now 9.5. So if I sold him and wanted to buy him back and he didn't fall in price, I'm losing like 0.5 million. So I envision that most people are probably just going to hold Isak, even if they don't free hit in 29, keep him on the bench and then just keep him through the blank game week. So there is a part of me which thinks in the coming game weeks there is a potential to sell Isak, but for now he'll be staying. With Wood and Mateta, in an ideal world, I would keep Mateta indefinitely, and I would sell Chris Wood if I was going to sell one of them because of the fixtures. Mateta's fixture run is much nicer. He's got Ipswich in 28, I believe it is. Then in 30, he's got Southampton. And before that, he's got United, Everton. These are good fixtures for Crystal Palace. Whereas Chris Wood's got Brighton, Fulham, Newcastle, Arsenal, City. It's really not a particularly nice run of fixtures there for Nottingham Forest. And I think in general, we've seen in the last couple of weeks, Forest haven't been fully at it, and maybe we will see a bit of a drop-off. Forest are a brilliant team. This wasn't a flash in the pan. They will continue to play well, but maybe we will see them drop off slightly, and also Chris Wood will do very well to maintain his current goal-scoring rate. So I think if I was to sell one of them, I'd rather sell Chris Wood. The concern for me, though, is that in Game Week 29, again, Chris Wood's got Ipswich, which is a great fixture. Mateta is likely to blank. So I would rather keep Mateta and sell Wood, but then in 29, I'd rather have Wood and obviously no Mateta. So I'm going back and forth on that at the moment. In all honesty, I might end up selling both of them. This week, there is a possible transfer route where I sell both. There's also one where I just sell Chris Wood. But I also, if I went into the Game Week 24 with Wood, Isak, Mateta as my front line, I'm fine with that. Home fixture for Chris Wood and Isak. Man United is a decent fixture for Mateta as well. I could definitely envision a world where just keeping the three of them works out as well. So that's the team overall. 3 free transfers. Let's now take a look at my possible transfer plans. So guys, moving on to my possible transfer plans. As I said, 3 free transfers, 0.7 in the bank. If you see something with my team that you think would be better than doing any of these, please do let me know. And also let me know which option you would vote for down below in the comments. I really do appreciate it. And obviously, each of these sets up the team in a very different way moving forward. So I'll try to explain some of that, but some of them you can't even predict. Like obviously using 3 free transfers gives me only 1 next week. Using 1 gives me 3 next week. But also these have different amounts of money in the bank as well, which might prevent or help with future moves. So there's a lot of thinking beyond just obviously what it looks at surface level. But basically option 1 and option 2, I should even say, I could roll the transfer, by the way, but I'm probably not going to do that because I think I would like a Brentford attacker, which is what all of these involve. Option 1 and option 2 involve just getting a Brentford attacker and then leaving it there. And I could even combine option 1 and 2. So option 1 is the most obvious, easy move for my team, and I'm 99% sure all of you are just going to say option 1 in the comments, especially because everyone hates Bruno Fernandes, but that is selling Bruno Fernandes for Bryan Mbeumo. Why do I like this? It keeps my structure exactly the same. It allows me to have 3 free transfers again going into Game Week 25. But it also frees up enough money for me to do Enzo to Cliver or Semenyo. Because as things stand, I can only get Dango Ouattara. By the way, at the moment, I'm leaning towards getting Dango Ouattara, believe it or not, as my Bournemouth mid. But this just opens up the opportunity for me to go and get Cliver or Semenyo instead. So I like it for that reason. That it leaves me flexible for Game Week 25, essentially. Option 2, the reason I like option 2 is because I would rather keep Fernandes than I would Chris Wood. And again, a lot of people won't agree with that. That's absolutely fine. But I think Fernandes over the next 5 to 10 games is a better option than Chris Wood. And so going from Wood to Wissa still gives me a bit of the Bournemouth attack, but it allows me to hold Fernandes, and in exactly the same way, it gives me 3 free transfers for Game Week 25. The concern for me is that Wissa doesn't cover MBEUMO. Wissa is a great option in and of himself, but MBEUMO is still fantastic. So just because I get a bit of the Brentford attack doesn't mean that I won't also get battered by Brian MBEUMO every week. As I said, another possibility is doing Fernandes to MBEUMO and Wood to Wissa, which is a combination of option 1 and 2. So if you think I should do both of those, comment down below option 1 and 2. That would still then give me 2 free transfers going into Game Week 25. So I'd still have a bit of flexibility, and I'd have even more money because Wissa and MBEUMO are both cheaper than Wood and Fernandes. So that is a real possibility for me, is that I just get rid of Fernandes, get rid of Wood. But then what I'm doing is getting rid of 2 penalty takers for 1 and getting rid of 2 90-minute talisman for 1 and a bit, I suppose. But I just think Fernandes and Wood are also really good holds, which is the thing that slightly put me off. And also, final thing, sorry, is Game Week 29, Fernandes has Leicester, Wood has Ipswich, MBEUMO and Wissa have Bournemouth away. I'd much rather Fernandes and Wood again come Game Week 29. So there's option 1 and 2. Option 3 and option 4 is basically getting MBEUMO in my team, but not selling Fernandes. And again, people just say, why are you spending all these transfers just to keep Bruno? Maybe I shouldn't. But option 3, I want you to put me off of this one because it's probably not the right thing to do. But basically, Chris Wood and Enzo are the 2 attackers that I'm happiest selling. If I look at my overall 8 attackers, 6 of them I want to keep. Wood and Enzo I don't necessarily want to keep. And so I can sell both of them and get Brian MBEUMO. It would be Wood to a 4.5 million forward. I could go and get like Jebison from Bournemouth, who might get some minutes, but I'd probably just get a non-playing 4.5 million pound forward and then Enzo to MBEUMO. So what this allows is to upgrade my weakest midfielder to Brian, but then also I would then lose my 8th attacker. So every single week, I would have to start Morgan Rogers and then my other 6. But if you think about who they are, it's Mateta, Isak, MBEUMO, Rogers, Fernandes, Salah, Palmer. You're happy starting most of those every week anyway. In fact, you don't apart from maybe Morgan Rogers, who, by the way, could become a Bournemouth midfielder, you are just happy starting these players all the time. So it doesn't necessarily matter too much about the 8th attacker until we get to Game Week 29. And again, going through that blank game week that we've got coming up, I'm going to have a dead spot in the forward line, which I'll then have to upgrade ahead of 29 or just play with fewer than 11 players, which once again, probably doesn't feel like the optimal play. So I like this because I sell my 2 weakest attackers, in my opinion, but I don't like it because it just makes my overall squad a little bit weaker. Option 4, I'm very tempted by this, is a triple move, but I currently have 0.0 in the bank. So I've got nothing in the bank on this. And it looks like MBEUMO might be rising in price soon. And also, I think one of the 3, I can't remember who it is, might be falling. So I might be priced out of this tonight. If I am priced out of this tonight, so be it, because I don't think I'm going to make this triple move tonight. If I do end up doing so, I'll post on my social media, but I don't think I'll make it tonight. And so I might be priced out anyway. But the idea would be still trying to get Enzo to MBEUMO, but not selling Wood for an absolutely dead asset. And so the only other way that I can work out to get Enzo to MBEUMO, whilst also keeping Fernandes, is to do Wood to Wissa, Mateta to Ndiaye, and Enzo to MBEUMO. I don't want to sell Mateta massively, but then again, if he's going to blank in 29 anyway, I probably will eventually. Ndiaye does have the double with Leicester, and I've said that I don't think he's a great option, but for his price, he facilitates other stuff. And then Wissa and MBEUMO come in as well. So it is actually, in my opinion, still a really nice triple transfer. But then I come back to a couple of things. That uses all of my remaining money. I sell Mateta, and then I only have 1 free transfer for Game Week 25. And then I have the option, do I keep Rogers against Ipswich but then not have a Bournemouth midfielder? Or do I have to sell Rogers then ahead of Ipswich to buy a Bournemouth midfielder against Southampton? So this, when I sell Enzo, essentially, it doesn't give me that easy route to a Bournemouth mid next week. So to circle back round, I think I'm going to do Fernandes to MBEUMO. I think that makes the most sense for my team. And then I think I'll probably leave the Wood to Wissa transfer and hope that the extra transfers next week make a lot of sense. But it might be tempting for me if I do... No, maybe it will depend if Van der Ven's out, because Van der Ven's back in training. If Van der Ven's back, then maybe I don't go for the double up on the Brentford attack. So we go back to my team now. This is the way things lining up at the moment. I think Fernandes will come in MBEUMO. Wood might become Wissa. And then I'll go into Game Week 25 with either 2 or 3 free transfers, depending what I do. Let me know what you think of my team, and let me know what your plans are as well. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 24 team selection and transfer plans. Hopefully that has been helpful. And if it has, please do smash that like button and make sure to subscribe as well. There'll be a deadline decisions video tomorrow and a deadline stream on Saturday. So subscribe, tune into those. But until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.